But the latest calls for a ban on TikTok have reignited the global debate on cybersecurity risks. But this isn't anything new.
Social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter have long been accused of improperly collecting and using user data. There's also the Hollywood version of cybercrimes, hacking. Threat actors, though, are as real as they come.
Cybercrimes cause trillions of dollars in financial losses each year. And according to one report, cyber attacks reached an all-time high last year. It includes one of the biggest hacks in history, the Optus debacle. 10 million people are estimated to have been affected. In response, the Australian government has since pledged to reform its cybersecurity rules and set up an agency to oversee responses to hacker attacks.
A similar call to action in the US. A top cybersecurity official suggested that new legislation should hold companies accountable and urged firms to automatically enroll users in multi-factor authentication.
To dive deeper into these growing cybersecurity concerns, we are joined by Amy Hogan-Burney. She's the general manager of the Digital Crimes Unit at Microsoft. Amy, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
As you just heard, a widening ban against TikTok and governments overhauling their cybersecurity rules. I mean, what do these developments tell you about the level of and the state of cybersecurity threats in the world, and how prepared are we in tackling them?
Yeah. Well, first, I think cybersecurity threats are a global concern, and we're seeing governments around the world legislate in this space. You mentioned the Australia rules. Those are similar to things we're seeing in China, in other areas, in Japan, here in Singapore, all kinds of different rules that we as tech companies need to adhere to. These are incredibly important to protect our customers, governments, businesses alike. So I think we'll continue to see these regulations go forward.
And how does a social media company like TikTok get drawn into the cybersecurity debate? You don't need to comment on the politics of it, but on the practical side of things, what are the concerns?
Well, on the practical side, every tech company is concerned about protecting users' privacy, and they want to protect both individual users and enterprise and business customer users as well. TikTok has the same goals, I think, that everyone else does, which is making sure that things stay secure and private. And really, you can't have that privacy without having the security as well.
And Amy, today's global conflicts, such as the Ukraine war, U.S.-China tensions, these are driving changes in the cybersecurity landscape. I mean, how worried should we be of the cyber implications of these geopolitical developments? And how should companies or countries in this part of the region especially, how should we prepare for such possibly potential spillover effects?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think at Microsoft, one of the things that we saw is that the cyber attacks in Ukraine actually began before the ground war. In addition to that, we've seen over a period of time cyber attacks that have been just before actions that have taken place on the ground as well. We also found that in order to have resiliency in systems for both the government and critical infrastructure, it was important that these companies and individuals in Ukraine, as well as the government, moved to the cloud. You want to have resiliency when you have any of these issues. And finally, there's really always a geopolitical aspect to this. You need to make sure that your data is regionalized in a way that's appropriate for each government and can be backed up appropriately as well for security.
Yeah, could you tell us more about what Microsoft's Digital Crimes Unit is doing with regards to cyber attacks in Ukraine?
Yes, I'm happy to. So Microsoft's Digital Crimes Unit really is designed to protect individuals, governments, and businesses. And they basically do that in 4 ways. So first, they use legal methods, so actual civil cases and legal takedowns in order to take down malicious criminal infrastructure. The second thing that they do is they partner with law enforcement around the world to share data as appropriate to find criminals, really deep attribution so that arrests can happen in this space. And then the third thing that we do is take those investigations, that information, that data that we collect, and we use it to harden our products and security. And then finally, we really look to educate victims, consumers, otherwise, to make them more prepared for any events in this space.
I mean, we've been hearing a lot about MFA, multi-factor authentication. In fact, your company has been called out by a U.S. cyber official about that's a slow adoption. I mean, tell us how effective is this as a tool, and what are some of the barriers against widespread adoption?
So first off, security is incredibly important at Microsoft, and we focus on it all the time. We block 1,000 password attacks per second, and many of those can be stopped by multi-factor authentication. We've been taking multi-factor authentication seriously for a long time, starting in 2013, where we pushed multi-factor authentication for all of our individual customer accounts. Also in 2019, we had all new business customers mandatory for multi-factor authentication, and we've seen that normalize MFA, and in fact, that has 37 million tenants protected by multi-factor authentication. But I do want to kind of pivot just a little bit to zero trust architecture, which I think goes hand in hand with multi-factor authentication. So if you're talking about one, we really need to talk about the other, which is zero trust architecture is when you are accessing a network system, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, or what you're accessing. We need to be in a place where we are looking at not just trusting, but always verify. So it is a verify, not trust environment. And this is so important. And I'll just give you one quick example of why. In 93% of our ransomware incidents where Microsoft has been helping the customer, where they didn't have least privileged access, the criminal was able to move laterally throughout their network system. And the damage caused by that ransomware attack was incredibly sophisticated and really deep for that customer. And so I think multi-factor authentication is important, but also that zero trust architecture to protect yourself.
And given the increasing cybersecurity concerns, it's certainly a growth industry to be working in. How is the need to get people into this profession being met?
Yeah, so I think it's so important for the private sector and governments alike to really recognize that we need to have cyber skills in this space. We talked about the regulation, we talked about the cyber criminal threats. There's no chance that the need is going down. And I think also you've heard me talk about both the private sector and the government together. So this is a team sport, and we clearly need more people on the team, right? By 2025, some people say that there's going to be 3.5 million open cybersecurity jobs. Microsoft has expanded our cyber skills initiative, and also we have partnered with the ASEAN Cyber Skilling Network here in order to train people in cybersecurity. About 634 of those training sessions have already happened. Those trainers will go out into all different areas in Asia and bring up cyber skills. I also think it's really important that we don't just focus on the number of jobs open and training people, but we focus on diversity here as well. We want to make sure that we have diversity and creativity in this area to really address the cyber problem.
Amy, we have about a minute on the clock. Could you tell us one of the most important piece of cybersecurity advice for a company or institution in today's environment?
Yeah, I think taking inventory of all of your digital assets is the very first place to start. Really knowing and understanding your environment is where I would begin.
Okay.
All right, Amy, thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise with us this morning. We've been speaking with Amy Hogan-Burney, General Manager of the Digital Crimes Unit at Microsoft.